Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast Special Edition solo show as I go over my bracket from an analytical standpoint. The last show I had my two friends, Selena and Joe, on as we went through our brackets and made our picks straight up. But this one I'm going to do my against the spread and straight up picks, go over them again, and then do projections for every matchup. Alrighty, so we are going to start with the first four, and we are going to start with the first matchup, which is 16 seeded from the East region, Mount St. Mary's against the 16 seeded from the East region, Texas Southern, in a play-in matchup. And Mount St. Mary's on the season, 12-10 overall, 9-7 in conference play. And Texas Southern on the season, 16-8 overall, 10-3 in conference play. My projection here is Texas Southern by 5, total of 135. And it is a pick'em at the moment. So I'm going to take Texas Southern at the pick'em to move on. And the total, by the way, for this game is 133, and my projection is 135. That's a 5-10 game on, I believe, True TV. Drake and Wichita State. I have Drake projected as 6.5-point favorite, total 141. These are the 11 seeds from the West region. Drake on the season, 25-4 overall, 15-3 in conference play. And Wichita State, 16-5 overall, 11-2 in conference play. And this is also a pick'em, total 140.5. I am going to take Drake minus 108 in the pick'em. 840 True TV, Norfolk State, Appalachian State. App State won the Sun Belt. And on the season, 17-11 overall, 7-8 in conference play. And Norfolk State on the season, 16-7 overall, 8-4 in conference play. My projections here is Norfolk State by 4, total 141. Meanwhile, it's App State by 3, total 133.5. I love Norfolk State plus the 3 and plus 130 straight up. And I love over 133.5. And at 9:57, so around 10 o'clock on TBS, you have UCLA and Michigan State. Michigan State's a 2-point favorite. The total is 135.5. My projection is UCLA by 2.5, total 140.5. Chris Smith's worth 2 points, or else UCLA would have been favored by 4.5 in this spot. By the way, UCLA on the season, 17-9 overall, 13-6 in conference play. And Michigan State, 15-12 overall, 9-11 in conference play. So I'm going to take UCLA plus the 2 at minus 106, plus 120 straight up. And the total, I like the over 2 at minus 106 as well. All right, for the first round, Colgate and Arkansas. I'm actually going to do the projections for the first round, but not the actuals. The actuals I'm going to do on the regular podcast come Friday because of obviously the teams that we are waiting for it from the first four. So, right off the gate, Virginia Tech and Florida. That's the 12:15 game on Friday afternoon that kicks it off. 10 seeded from the South, Virginia Tech. 7 seeded from the South, Florida. Florida, good season. A little disappointing, though. And Virginia Tech, surprisingly decent season. My projection is Florida by 2, total 140.5. My pick to advance in the bracket is the Gators. And by the way, I believe this is a pick'em as well. Although, like I said, I'm not going to say all the lines, but that one I know is a pick'em because not all of them are out yet because of, like I said, the 11 seed games. 12:45, Colgate, Arkansas. I project Arkansas by 3.5, total 154. Arkansas, I have to the second round. That's the South region as well. 16 seed Midwest Drexel against 1 seed Midwest Illinois. My projection is Illinois by 13, total 144.5. I have Illinois advancing. And that game, obviously, is a 115 game. Utah State and Texas Tech, that is a 145 game. 11-seeded Utah State and 6-seeded from the South Texas Tech. My projection is Utah State by 1.5, total 135.5. So therefore, Utah State I have advancing. I think Utah State is a really, really good team. I think Texas Tech is good too. I think that is a tough game to pick, and it wouldn't surprise me who ends up winning that game. Utah State, I think, could have the best player on the court in this game in Neemias Queta, who's a double-double machine. And Texas Tech has Matt McClung, who's awesome as well. They're the deeper team. I'm going to go with the upset with Utah State. Oral Roberts in Ohio State. I project Ohio State by 9, total 152.5. That's obviously the 215 in the South region. Ohio State, a little bit of a take care of business and go on type of game for them. Your 116 in the South region, Hartford, Baylor. That is a 3:30 game on True TV. By the way, Ohio State, Oral Roberts is 3 o'clock on CBS. So 3:30 True TV, Hartford, Baylor. My projections, Baylor by 18.5, total 140. I have Baylor advancing, obviously. The 8-9 in the Midwest, Georgia Tech and Loyola Chicago. My projections, Loyola Chicago by 7, total 136. So I have Loyola Chicago advancing. The 12-5 in the Midwest, 4:30 on TNT. By the way, 4 o'clock TBS is the Georgia Tech Loyola Chicago game. So Oregon State, Tennessee, 4:30 TNT. Oregon, Tennessee, 12-5 in the Midwest. I have Tennessee by 7.5, total 137. So I have Tennessee advancing there. Liberty and Oklahoma State is your 4:13 in the Midwest. My projections, Liberty by 1, total 142.5. All due respect to Cade Cunningham, who might be the National Player of the Year. I'm going to go with Richie McKay's Liberty Flames to pull off the upset and advance. And I think that team's pretty deep. Your 8-9, the South region, Wisconsin and Carolina. I have Carolina by a half, total 139.5. Two teams, as I mentioned, that I thought underachieved this season. I think Carolina's deeper, led by Garrison Brooks, so I'm going to go with Carolina in that one. Your 215 the Midwest, Cleveland State and Houston. I have Houston by 11, total 138.5. Houston, I think, will obviously move on. Although I won't be shocked if Cleveland State ends up covering the spread. Your 413 in the South, North Texas and Purdue. I have Purdue by 4.5, total 133. So I think your 4 seed Purdue will move on, but I think that game could be close. Your 7-10 in the Midwest, Rutgers and Clemson. I have Clemson by 1, total 133. I think that Clemson will surprise some people and win and advance. Your 11-6 in the Midwest, Syracuse and San Diego State. I have San Diego State by a whopping 8.5, total 141. So I'm going to go with San Diego State to advance against Buddy Boeheim and the Orange. Your 3-14 in the Midwest, West Virginia, Morehead State. I have West Virginia by 2.5, total 141. I think the Mountaineers are the better team and the deeper team. This is a projection I really don't trust, so I'm going to go with the Mountaineers. And then your 12-5 in the South region, Winthrop and Villanova. I have Villanova as a 5.5-point underdog, total 144.5. Obviously, the injuries to Justin Moore and Colin Gillespie hurt, and that's why the line is such a high line. I'm going to take Winthrop for the upset to move on. And by the way, the times of the rest of those games, Liberty, Oklahoma State is in the night window, 6:25 on TBS. Wisconsin, Carolina, 7:10 on CBS. 7:15 True TV is Cleveland State, Houston. 7:25 TNT is North Texas, Purdue. 9:20 TBS is Rutgers, Clemson. By the way, Rutgers is favored in that game. 9:40 CBS, Syracuse, San Diego State. And at 9:50 on True TV, Morgan State, West Virginia. And 9:57 on TNT, Winthrop and Villanova. The Saturday window, 12:15 CBS to kick it off. Georgetown and Colorado. My projections, Colorado 10, total 139. So I have Colorado advancing. UNC Greensboro and Florida State, I have it as Pick'em and 145. I'm going to take the Seminoles because I have the Seminoles favored by just a teeny bit, like 0.125, and that rounds to a Pick'em. So with the numbers, I'm going to go with the Gators. And that game is at 12:45 on True TV. 1:15 on TBS, Eastern Washington, Kansas. I'm going with the Jayhawks, who I projected as a 6-point favorite, total 143.5. No McCormick for them for now, and that obviously is worth a point, or else it would have been 7. Your 8-9 in the East region, 145 TNT, St. Bonaventure and LSU. I have LSU by a half, total 144. So I'm going to have LSU advancing. In the East region, 3 o'clock CBS, you have the Mount St. Mary's Texas Southern winner against Michigan. I'm going to say that that's Texas Southern. Michigan 20-4 on the season. They're really good. Obviously, they don't have Isaiah Livers, which is going to hurt, but I think they should get by Texas Southern. 3:30 True TV, Santa Barbara and Creighton. I have Creighton by a half, total 141.5. I'm going to go with Creighton, as I think Santa Barbara will hang around in that game, as I mentioned in the podcast with Joe and Selena. 4 o'clock TBS, Iona and Alabama. I have Alabama 13.5, total 144. That is a pretty hefty number that I project here. So I'm going to roll with the Tide here, obviously, to advance. And that is a 4 o'clock game on TBS, is your 15-2 in the East region. And something that I am just noticing right now is that day 1 is all of the South and the Midwest, and day 2 is all of the West and the East. Your 6-11 in the West region, I have Drake playing USC. My projected number is Drake by 2, and that game is going to be played 4:30 on TNT on Saturday late afternoon. And then the late night session, 6:25 TBS, Grand Canyon in Iowa. That is your 2:15 in the West. I have Iowa by 5.5, total 144.5. I'm going to go with Iowa. Your 7:10 in the East region, Maryland and UConn. 7 o'clock CBS. I have UConn 7, total 135. So I'm going to have UConn advancing. In the West region, Ohio and Virginia as your 4:13. That game will be at 7:15 on True TV. I have Virginia by 8, total 141.5. 7:25 on TNT, Missouri and Oklahoma. I have Oklahoma by 1, total 145. I think that's going to be a really good game. And I'm going to go with Oklahoma to advance. 9:20 on TBS, you have Gonzaga facing the 16 seed, which I have being Norfolk State, and it's going to be the winner, obviously, of Norfolk State and App State. My projection number is Gonzaga 19. BYU against the UCLA and Michigan State winner in the East region as your 6-11. I'm going to go with UCLA against BYU. My projection is BYU by 3. So I have BYU advancing. And by the way, the reason why I obviously don't have totals for the 11-6s and the 116s is because of what I said in my conference tournament podcast. It's harder to project totals with teams that have in theory have already played than lines. Your 3-14 in the East region, Texas and Abilene Christian. My projection is actually Abilene Christian by 1, total 141. This is the one game where I'm not pulling the trigger on a 14-3 upset. I just cannot see Texas beating Abilene Christian. Abilene Christian's really good, but I'm going to disagree with my projection. I'm going to take Texas to win in the bracket, but I'm definitely going to take Abilene Christian to cover the point spread. And that's why I have some asterisks by that in my notes here. And that game is a 9:50 game on True TV. And by the way, the BYU against the play-in winner between Michigan State and UCLA game is 9:40 on CBS. And Gonzaga, as I mentioned, 9:20 on TBS. And in the last round of 64 game, your 7-10 in the West region, VCU and Oregon. My projections, Oregon 5.5, total 139.5. And I am going to take the Oregon Ducks to advance. Now the round of 32 projections. We'll start at the top left of the bracket. Gonzaga and Oklahoma is your 8-1 in the West. My projections, Gonzaga 15.5, so therefore Gonzaga to the Sweet 16. Creighton, Virginia. I have Virginia only by a half. So Virginia to the Sweet 16. Drake, Kansas. I have Drake by 2. So that means I would have Drake in the Sweet 16. And then Oregon, Iowa as your 2-7 in the West. By the way, Drake, Kansas is a 3-11 in the West. So 2-7 in the West, Drake and Iowa. Oregon and Iowa. I have Oregon by a half, so Oregon into the Sweet 16. And then down to the bottom left of the bracket, Michigan, LSU as your 1-8 in the South, the East region. I have Michigan by a half. So therefore, Michigan to the Sweet 16. You're 5-4 in the East, Colorado, FSU. I have FSU by 1. Or Colorado by 1, my bad, as FSU is out in the round of 32. You're 3-6 in the East, BYU, Texas. I have BYU by 2, so I have BYU in the Sweet 16. And you're 2-7 in the East, UConn, Alabama. I have Alabama by 5, so the Crimson Tide to the Sweet 16. The bottom right of the brackets, that's the Midwest region. Loyola, Chicago, and Illinois. I have Illinois by 1. You're 5-13. Liberty and Tennessee. So I have Tennessee as a 1-point dog. So another upset. So Liberty is a double-digit seed into the Sweet 16, joining Drake. Maybe one more. Spoiler. You're 6-3 in the Midwest, San Diego State and West Virginia. I actually have San Diego State as a projected 4.5-point favorite. So San Diego State to the Sweet 16. And last but not least, Clemson and Houston. As your 2-7 in the Midwest, I have Houston by a whopping 10. So Houston to the Sweet 16. And then the top right of the bracket, which is the South region, your 8-1 is Carolina and Baylor. As your 8-1, I have Baylor by 9.5, so Baylor to the Sweet 16. Your 12-4, Winthrop and Purdue. I have Winthrop by a whopping 6.5, so I have Winthrop as the third double-digit seed in the Sweet 16. The 3-11, Utah State and Arkansas. I have Arkansas by 1.5. And then your 2-7 in the South region, Florida and Ohio State. I have the Buckeyes by 2.5. So the Buckeyes into the Sweet 16. So the Sweet 16, you're 1-4 in the West, Gonzaga, Virginia. My projections, Gonzaga by 9. Gonzaga, really good team. I think that their depth will prevail against the Cavaliers, as your reigning champs will get knocked out. Drake and Oregon as a 7-11 matchup in the Sweet 16 in the West bracket. I have Drake by a half. I know Dana Altman is a great March coach, and Drake has just been tremendous. They're a great defensive team. Oregon defensively, I don't think, is that great. So I'm going to go with Drake into the Elite Eight. Winthrop and Baylor. as the 12-1 in the Sweet 16. I have Baylor by 4.5. So Jared Butler and the Bears survive and go to the Elite Eight. And now this is the top right corner of the bracket. Arkansas and Ohio State. I have Arkansas by 1. I think that their depth is better than Ohio State's, and I think they've been playing better all around. So we'll go Arkansas in the Elite Eight, as Eric Musselman will outcoach Chris Holtmann. Midwest region, so that is the bottom right. Liberty and Illinois, I have as a Sweet 16 matchup. My projections, Illinois by 3. So Ayo DeSambu and company will go to the Elite Eight. San Diego State and Houston, and you're 6-2 in the Midwest region. I have Houston by 1. Creighton Grimes, best player on the court in that game. So the Cougars go to the Elite Eight. And in the East region, which is the bottom left, Colorado and Michigan, I have Colorado favored by 1.5. McKinley McWright is the best player on the court in this matchup. No Isaiah Livers for Michigan will come back and haunt him here. So I'm going to go with Colorado in the Elite Eight. And the 2-6, BYU Alabama, I have the Tide by 1. The Tide have the deeper roster and just a flat-out better roster than the Cougars. And obviously, I think they have a better head coach too in Nate Oates, as I think that their depth, led by Herbert Jones, Jaden Shackelford, Javon Quinterly, and John Petty Jr. will lead them to the Elite Eight. And then the Elite Eight. The regional final in the West region, I have Drake and Gonzaga. Drake, what a great Cinderella story. They are just incredible. I think that could be the 2018 Loyola Chicago, where they are like the darlings per se and make a deep run. They have great depth, led by Shanquan Hempel and Joseph Yusufu. But who's beating the Zags? Someone tell me who is beating the Zags in the West region. I have the answer for you. It's no one. Corey Kispert and Drew Timme and Jalen Suggs will lead the way as Gonzaga will go to the Final Four. As I project Gonzaga by 9. Or I'm sorry, 8.5. I'm looking at the wrong round. In the South region, which is the top right, Arkansas and Baylor. Two tremendous teams all season long. Obviously, Arkansas, to me, one of the pleasant surprises this year in the SEC. Eric Musselman has to be among the best coaches that nobody really talks about. They're led by Moses Moody and J.D. Nate. And on the other side, with Baylor, they're led by Jared Butler and have a great coach in Scott Drew. And you can't sleep on Makio Teague and Davion Mitchell as well. Those are also really good players for Baylor. 3 very talented guards and forwards. Because some of them play combo. My projection is Baylor by 6.5, so I have Baylor into the Final Four. The Midwest region, which is the bottom right, I have 2-seeded Houston against 1-seeded Illinois. Houston has been tremendous all season long. I think they're the most underrated team in all of college basketball, led by Quentin Grimes and Marcus Sasser. They have a great coach in Kelvin Sampson, who I think has really brought this program back to relevancy. The Illini have been great. This is their best season in years. They're led by, obviously, the best player in the Big Ten, other than Luka Garza, arguably. But I think he's played better than Luka Garza this year, and that's Ayo DeSambu. And Kofi Cockburn's an awesome player, and Trent Frazier is really good as well. So they have a good big 3. But I'm going to go with the upset Houston. I project Houston by 1.5 over Illinois. So my surprise team in the Final Four is Houston. Because there's always like one random surprise team in there. And I'm going to say it's the Cougars. And then last but not least, in the bottom left of the bracket, the East region, you have 5-seeded Colorado and 2-seeded Alabama. Colorado, I thought was overseeded, but I think got a really good path here to this spot. They're obviously led by McKinley Wright IV, who I've been talking about all night long, who is very capable of being the best player on the court on any given night. But the Crimson Tide just have a better team and better depth, led by Shackelford, Quinterly, Petty, and Jones. And I think that the Tide will roll to the Final Four. And I have Alabama as a 3.5-point favorite as a projection here. All right, Final Four. On the left side of the bracket, Gonzaga and Alabama. Your 2 seed from the East and your 1 seed from the West. I talked about the rosters. Alabama and Gonzaga are both deep. The best player on the court in this game is going to be Jalen Suggs. Gonzaga's a 7.5-point favorite. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga to the championship to get closer to making history here. And then the Midwest region, I have Houston as the 2 seed coming out of that. And then your 1 seed in the South, Baylor. To me, this comes down to depth. I think the Baylor has better depth, led by Butler, obviously, and Mitchell. And I'm going to take Baylor to face Gonzaga in the national championship game, and I have Baylor as a projected 2.5-point favorite over Houston in that projected match. And then your championship in Indianapolis on April 5th, that Monday night, your 1 seed from the South on the right side of the bracket, the Baylor Bears, and your 1 seed from the left side of the bracket from the West region, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. 2 great teams. These 2 teams have been the best 2 teams all season long. The best 2 teams right now are arguably Gonzaga and Illinois, but the best 2 teams all season long have been Baylor and Gonzaga. These 2 teams have been the most talked about teams all season long, but for great reasons. Both these teams are deep. Both of these teams can score the basketball. Both these teams can defend well. But quite frankly, I think Gonzaga has a big chip on its shoulder. Mark Few wants to get that first title. Gonzaga wants to make history, and I think they're going to do so. I have them projected as a 3.5-point favorite over Baylor. And your 2021 national champions will be the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So there you have it for the solo podcast. That is just the analytic numbers that I provide for my projections on how I made my picks for the tournament this year. And obviously stay tuned for podcasts all week long talking about the NCAA tournament as well when I do the NCAA tournament segments and obviously within the next few weeks as well. Hope you guys have a great night, everyone.